Have you ever wondered what really happens the moment you begin to see what others refuse to notice? That strange shift, when the world stops looking familiar, when people's words no longer match their intentions, and when the fabric of reality feels thinner than it used to be. This is the unsettling doorway of spiritual awakening, that instant where your perception sharpens, your awareness expands, and you start recognizing patterns that were invisible to you before. At first it feels like clarity, a sudden sense that you are finally understanding something deeper about human behavior, emotional energy, and the hidden mechanics of consciousness. But almost immediately, this clarity carries a subtle weight. You begin noticing the forced smiles, the unspoken fears behind confident postures, the emotional turbulence hiding underneath casual conversations. It is as if a veil has been removed, and now every interaction reveals layers of truth that most people never even register. This early phase of awakening often brings a strange mixture of empowerment and discomfort. You feel more alive, more present, more connected to something real. Yet at the same time, you sense the distance forming between you and the world you used to inhabit effortlessly. Familiar environments start to feel shallow. Ordinary conversations feel scripted, predictable, almost artificial. While others continue living inside the surface-level story, you suddenly have access to the subtext, the emotional undercurrents, the suppressed pain, the unconscious patterns guiding people without their awareness. And this raises a crucial question. What do you do with this new vision? How do you move through a world that seems unchanged while you are no longer the same? These early realizations set the foundation for everything that comes next, shaping the way you interpret reality, relationships, and your own inner landscape. Before we move forward, share your own experience. Have you ever felt this sudden clarity, this sense that you were seeing beyond what others could perceive? If this resonates, leave a comment, make sure to like the video, and check if you are already subscribed so you do not miss what unfolds next as we continue deepening this journey of awakening and expanded consciousness. When you begin to see beyond the surface, a quiet internal tension starts to grow, almost like your mind and your intuition are no longer speaking the same language as the people around you. What once felt normal now feels strangely out of place. You sense that something within you has shifted, even if nothing outside appears different. And this internal shift creates a friction that is difficult to explain to anyone who has not experienced it. It is the discomfort of knowing too much, of perceiving subtleties that most people are simply not attuned to notice. This discomfort is not dramatic, it is subtle, steady, and persistent. You might find yourself pulling away from conversations that drain your energy because you can feel the emotional currents hiding underneath the words. You start to notice that many interactions are driven not by authenticity, but by fear, validation-seeking, or unconscious habit. And the more you awaken, the more transparent these hidden motivations become. What used to blend into the background now stands out sharply, almost as if someone quietly increased the contrast of your entire perception. There is also a kind of psychological dissonance that arises. Part of you wants to maintain old rhythms, to keep acting like everything is normal, while another part refuses to deny what you now see so clearly. You realize that the structures people cling to, status, approval, routines, arguments, superficial goals, are built on foundations you can no longer pretend are solid. You feel the fragility of these constructs, their emptiness, their reliance on collective agreement, and this awareness can make ordinary life feel oddly heavy, like wearing clothes that no longer fit. The discomfort deepens when you notice how few people truly observe their own behavior. You can sense when someone is lying to themselves, hiding from their own emotions, or performing a version of themselves just to get through the day. You see the tension behind their eyes, the exhaustion they try to mask, the fear that guides their choices. This ability to perceive what others overlook does not make you superior. It simply makes you more aware of how asleep the world truly is. And as your clarity sharpens, you begin to understand why awakening feels less like an escape and more like an internal reckoning, one that continues unfolding even when you wish it would slow down. As your perception sharpens, something subtle but unmistakable begins to happen. You start drifting away from the world everyone else seems perfectly comfortable living in. Not because you decide to isolate yourself, and not because you suddenly dislike people, but because the surface-level reality that once felt acceptable now feels unbearably thin. It is like watching a play from backstage. Once you see the ropes, the props, the rehearsed lines, it becomes almost impossible to enjoy the performance the same way again. This silent break is not dramatic. It is not marked by grand declarations or conflicts. It unfolds quietly, almost invisibly, through a series of small internal choices. You find yourself disengaging from conversations that revolve around gossip, competition, or meaningless complaints because you can feel the emptiness behind them. The words sound hollow. The exchanges feel rehearsed. Everyone seems to be acting out a script, unaware they are doing so, and you can no longer participate without feeling the weight of inauthenticity pressing against your chest. You begin noticing that much of modern social behavior is driven by unconscious repetition. People asking questions they do not care about, offering opinions they did not form themselves, following routines they never questioned. And while they move comfortably within this pattern, you feel increasingly like an observer rather than a participant. You sense the energetic dissonance in rooms where people hide their true emotions. You notice how often people avoid silence because silence reveals too much, and gradually, what once felt normal becomes increasingly difficult to endure. Even familiar places start to feel foreign. The noise of constant distraction, the pressure to perform a version of yourself, the expectation to remain shallow so others do not feel uncomfortable, all of it becomes clearer and more exhausting. You stop pretending to enjoy what never aligned with you. You stop forcing small talk. You stop tolerating environments that pull you back into unconsciousness. The world has not changed, but your awareness has, and that alone creates a quiet distance between you and the superficial rhythm most people consider everyday life. This withdrawal is not rejection, it is recognition. Recognition that something within you is awakening, expanding, demanding truth over performance. And as this recognition deepens, the separation from old environments becomes less of a choice and more of an inevitability, guiding you toward a level of authenticity you can no longer ignore. As your awareness grows, a certain solitude naturally settles in, not the ordinary kind of loneliness where you simply lack company, but a profound, almost existential isolation. You find that even among friends, family, or colleagues, your perception sets you apart. The clarity that allows you to see beyond appearances, to detect subtle emotional patterns, and to perceive the hidden currents beneath social interactions also makes it increasingly difficult to relate to those who have not awakened. Conversations that once felt effortless now feel strained, hollow, or exhausting, as though you are speaking a different language entirely. This isolation is not always welcome. There is a bittersweet quality to it, a tension between the liberation of seeing clearly and the subtle ache of feeling alone in that clarity. You realize that your internal world is expanding faster than the external environment can accommodate. The subtle energies you perceive, the suppressed fears, unspoken frustrations, and hidden insecurities of those around you, begin to weigh on you. What once passed unnoticed now lodges itself in your consciousness, and you can feel it pulsing through rooms, conversations, and casual interactions. Yet within this isolation lies a strange paradox. The more alone you feel, the deeper your connection to your own truth becomes. Your emotional landscape, unpolluted by the unconscious projections of others, begins to emerge with unprecedented clarity. You start distinguishing which feelings are truly yours and which belong to the people around you, learning to navigate your own internal world with a precision and honesty that was previously impossible. This solitude is a crucible, refining your awareness, strengthening your inner boundaries, and revealing the depth of your own consciousness. It is during these moments of isolation that the awakened begin to encounter the rawness of existence, unfiltered emotions, unspoken truths, and the vulnerability of being seen as you truly are. And as this reality settles in, you may find yourself reflecting. How do others manage to live so comfortably without noticing these hidden currents? Why do they cling to illusions that you can no longer entertain? And in contemplating these questions, you start to recognize the profound responsibility of awareness. So I want to ask you, right here, right now, how have you experienced moments where your clarity created distance between you and the people around you? Leave a comment sharing your experience. Let's explore together how this isolation shapes your path and deepens your understanding of awakening. As you continue to awaken, your ability to perceive hidden layers of human behavior sharpens, almost as if a new lens has been placed over your consciousness. You begin to notice the subtleties of intention, the unspoken motivations, and the unacknowledged fears that guide people's actions. Every gesture, tone of voice, or fleeting expression carries meaning that others around you seem oblivious to. What once passed unnoticed now resonates with clarity, revealing patterns that were previously invisible, and with this insight comes both power and burden. This perceptual acuity is not merely intellectual, it operates on an intuitive level, alerting you to emotional currents and unconscious dynamics in real time. You can sense when someone is masking insecurity with bravado, projecting their anxieties as control, or seeking validation under the guise of generosity. Every interaction becomes a complex map of unspoken desires and hidden tensions. The mind begins to catalog these insights, analyzing and connecting dots that no one else perceives. In a way, you start seeing the world as a multidimensional network of intentions rather than just surface interactions. Yet this capacity, as enlightening as it is, carries a profound psychological cost. Constantly perceiving what others conceal demands energy, focus, and emotional resilience. You absorb subtle emotional undercurrents without even asking for them, and over time, this can lead to fatigue, internal tension, and a sense of being perpetually responsible for truths that are not yours to solve. Your empathy amplifies, your discernment sharpens, but the boundary between your inner world and the external environment becomes fragile, requiring conscious effort to maintain. And this is where the paradox emerges. The more accurately you read others, the more isolated you can feel. Relationships that were once comfortable become strained as the veil lifts and hidden realities surface. People may react unconsciously to your clarity, feeling exposed, challenged, or even threatened. Yet despite the strain, this awareness is essential. It equips you to navigate the social world with a level of authenticity, discernment, and compassion previously unavailable. You learn to engage selectively, to choose where your presence and energy are invested, and to act in alignment with truth rather than projection. Understanding human intentions at this depth is not a skill to flaunt, but a responsibility to integrate. You cannot force others to confront what they cannot see, but you can navigate your life with unprecedented clarity. And it is in this delicate balance, perceiving, discerning, and maintaining boundaries, that your growth deepens, your consciousness expands, and the awakening experience transforms from mere observation into profound insight that guides every choice you make. As your awareness deepens, a striking realization emerges. Much of what people consider reality is, in fact, a carefully maintained performance. Society functions like an elaborate stage, with each individual playing a role, following scripts learned from culture, family, and circumstance. You start to perceive the mechanics behind these performances, the subtle ways people seek approval, hide vulnerabilities, or conform unconsciously to collective expectations. What once seemed spontaneous now appears orchestrated, and this understanding begins to reshape your relationship with the world. Recognizing the performative nature of social life brings clarity, but also a subtle sense of estrangement. You see colleagues enacting confidence that is brittle, friends masking anxiety behind forced laughter, and strangers navigating routines with robotic precision. Their roles, while essential to social cohesion, reveal the gap between external appearances and internal reality. And once you perceive this, participating in these performances becomes increasingly uncomfortable. You Feel the pull to step out, to observe rather than act, to resist the scripts that no longer resonate with your awakened perspective. Detachment from these roles is not about judgment or superiority. It is about recognizing that your authentic self cannot fully engage in a world of pretense without compromising clarity. The challenge lies in navigating interactions without being absorbed into the illusion, without adopting masks that distort your perception. This requires vigilance, self-awareness, and a conscious choice to maintain boundaries while still existing within the social framework. You learn to move through spaces with presence, noticing the subtleties of behavior without allowing them to dictate your internal state. And as this detachment deepens, you discover a paradoxical freedom. By stepping back from the performance, you gain perspective, clarity, and emotional resilience. You no longer react reflexively to the unspoken dramas unfolding around you, and you begin to understand the distinction between the play and the player. This awareness allows you to observe without judgment, to empathize without being manipulated by unconscious patterns, and to engage selectively, choosing interactions that align with your integrity and growth. Ultimately, perceiving the social performance teaches you the delicate art of conscious participation. You are present in the world, but not of the world. You observe the play, you see the actors, yet you remain anchored in your truth. And this skill, navigating the stage without losing yourself, sets the stage for the next layer of awakening, where the tension between truth, silence, and communication becomes a defining aspect of your spiritual evolution. As your perception sharpens, you encounter a dilemma that is as subtle as it is powerful, the tension between remaining silent and revealing the truths you perceive. On one hand, speaking exposes hidden realities that most people are not ready to see. On the other, silence preserves relationships, maintains energy, and protects your own sense of stability. Every interaction becomes a careful calculation of timing, trust, and consequence as you navigate the invisible currents of awareness and social expectation. You notice how revealing too much too soon can provoke resistance, defensiveness, or outright hostility. People react unconsciously to being confronted with their own blind spots, their illusions, and their unacknowledged emotions. Even the most compassionate truth, when shared prematurely, can be perceived as criticism, judgment, or intrusion. And yet, withholding insight entirely can feel like a betrayal of your own clarity, a compromise of your inner alignment. The balance is delicate, demanding a deep understanding of both human nature and your own boundaries. This tension also amplifies the inner voice, that quiet awareness urging you to discern when to act and when to observe. You learn that every word carries weight, that silence is often as powerful as speech, and that timing can transform reception. The awakened mind begins to cultivate patience, empathy, and strategic awareness, understanding that consciousness evolves at its own pace, and that forcing insight onto someone unprepared is rarely effective. And yet, remaining silent indefinitely is not without cost. The truths you perceive seek expression. They shape your choices, your emotional landscape, and your interactions. The challenge is to communicate without attachment to outcome, to speak with clarity and integrity, while allowing others the space to process without coercion. It becomes an art, balancing honesty, discretion, and compassion, while navigating the tension between being seen and protecting your own energy. So I invite you to reflect. How do you handle the moments when clarity confronts the need for discretion? How do you balance speaking your truth with respecting the readiness of others? Leave a comment, sharing your experiences and insights. Your reflections are part of understanding this delicate dance between awareness and expression, and help illuminate the path of awakening for both yourself and others who may be listening. As you move deeper into awakening, a remarkable shift begins to occur. The compulsion to intervene, correct, or fix the unconscious behavior of others gradually dissolves. You realize that attempting to force transformation externally often leads to frustration, conflict, and exhaustion. Every attempt to rescue someone from their patterns or illusions highlights the limits of influence and the essential truth that change cannot be imposed. True clarity arises when you accept that each individual's journey unfolds at its own pace, and that your awareness is not a tool to manipulate, but a lens to understand. This insight is liberating yet counterintuitive. Early in awakening, you may have felt a sense of responsibility for exposing hidden truths, for guiding others toward enlightenment, or for pointing out what they cannot see. But spiritual maturity teaches a different approach: observation without interference. You learn that by maintaining your own clarity, boundaries, and presence, you provide a subtle example, a gentle container in which others can awaken in their own time. The energy once invested in trying to fix now shifts toward deepening your understanding and sustaining your equilibrium. Moreover, this surrender to non-intervention does not mean disengagement. Instead, it cultivates a form of conscious detachment where you can fully empathize without being emotionally entangled, where you can perceive intentions and patterns without absorbing them as your own. You begin to witness the world with an unwavering steadiness, recognizing the distinction between what is yours to influence and what belongs to others unfolding. This clarity allows you to navigate complex relationships and social environments without the psychic turbulence that formerly accompanied your sensitivity to hidden dynamics. In this space, your perception becomes sharper, not weaker. By ceasing to impose solutions, you refine your discernment, intuitively recognizing opportunities for action and the limits of your role in others' growth. You see the flow of consciousness and the natural evolution of awareness in others, and you no longer feel compelled to accelerate it unnaturally. Instead, you hold the space, a quiet, present, unwavering container in which truth can reveal itself organically. This profound shift marks a turning point in your awakening journey. It transforms your engagement with the world, infusing your presence with authenticity, patience, and trust. You begin to understand that real transformation is never forced, that consciousness cannot be rushed, and that the ultimate gift you offer is your presence, clarity, and alignment with truth. By letting go of the need to fix, you step fully into the role of the observer and the awakened participant, shaping your experience with intention, integrity, and wisdom. As you integrate the awakening, a profound inner life begins to emerge, rich and multidimensional, distinct from the world's collective patterns. You discover a sense of depth that was previously inaccessible, a landscape of awareness where thoughts, emotions, and subtle perceptions coexist with clarity and insight. By embracing the reality that you perceive differently, you cultivate a sanctuary within yourself, a place where your consciousness can expand without interference or judgment from external expectations. This blossoming inner life transforms every facet of experience. You find that solitude is no longer a source of loneliness, but a fertile ground for reflection, creativity, and emotional intelligence. Emotions are experienced with nuance and authenticity, unmediated by the need to perform for others. Thoughts unfold with clarity, enabling deeper understanding of motivations, desires, and the hidden structures of the self. Each moment becomes an opportunity to engage with your own consciousness as a dynamic, living system, rather than a reactive participant in the world's habitual dramas. As this internal expansion develops, your relationship with others also shifts. You no longer require validation or understanding from those who remain asleep to the subtleties you perceive. Instead, you engage selectively, maintaining meaningful connections while preserving the integrity of your internal experience. This discernment is not rooted in separation or superiority, but in a recognition that your awareness and energy are precious resources that must be navigated wisely. Interactions become intentional, compassionate, and aligned with the deeper currents you now understand. Moreover, the inner life that emerges fosters resilience. By observing your own consciousness in this detailed and liberated manner, you develop the capacity to remain centered amid external chaos. You begin to notice the distinction between reactive patterns imposed by society and the natural flow of your awakened perception. Your sense of identity stabilizes around awareness itself, not external approval or conformity. This allows you to act with authenticity while navigating complex social environments with wisdom and poise. Ultimately, this blossoming inner life is the fruit of integrating perception with presence. You experience the freedom of knowing that your consciousness is both fully engaged and self-contained, capable of observing without being consumed, sensing without being overwhelmed, and living fully while remaining attuned to your own truth. It is in this internal richness that the awakened find both refuge and power, a domain where clarity, emotional depth, and spiritual insight coalesce into a coherent and profoundly liberating experience. As your awakening reaches its maturity, the culmination of perception, clarity, and inner insight reveals a fundamental truth. The world is far richer, deeper, and more interconnected than appearances suggest. The hidden structures guiding human behavior, the subtle currents of energy, and the unspoken truths beneath social conventions all become visible in ways that shift your entire understanding of existence. You realize that identity, perception, and reality are interwoven in a tapestry far more intricate than anyone around you seems to notice, and that your role is not to change it for them, but to navigate it with awareness and integrity. This revelation transforms how you engage with life. You no longer measure experiences against superficial expectations or conventional narratives. Instead, you observe patterns, intuitions, and energies as they truly are. You respond to the world from a place of authenticity, where actions align with insight rather than obligation, and decisions arise naturally from clarity rather than fear or conditioning. This is the power of seeing beyond what others accept as reality. It frees you from performing roles that no longer fit and enables you to participate fully in the flow of existence without losing your center. Yet the gift of this perception is also a responsibility. You understand the necessity of discernment, when to act, when to hold space, and when to observe. You no longer impose truths on others, knowing that awakening unfolds at its own pace and that forcing insight can disrupt growth rather than promote it. In this way, your presence becomes both stabilizing and illuminating, offering a subtle, compassionate guidance by example rather than instruction. Others may feel your clarity, sense your groundedness, and find inspiration without needing words. And now, as you integrate this awareness fully, I invite you to reflect on what this journey has revealed: the significance of observing without attachment, the wisdom of balancing presence with detachment, and the liberation that comes from aligning perception with action. If you have followed this exploration to the end, leave a comment saying, "I stayed with the truth until the end," like the video to honor your engagement, and make sure to subscribe so you can continue exploring consciousness at this depth. There is another video waiting that complements this journey perfectly. Click and continue alongside me as we navigate the intricate paths of seeing beyond the ordinary and living with awakened clarity.